At some point, you stopped explaining yourself, not out of confidence, not out of strength. It just happened. You didn't announce it. You didn't make a decision. You didn't even notice when it began. But something inside you closed, quietly and strangely. That's when people started treating you differently. Not better, not worse, just different. You felt it before you could name it, in the way conversation shortened, in how people hesitated before speaking to you, in how their tone softened without them realizing why, and you didn't understand it. Because you didn't do anything, you just stopped explaining. And that unsettled them. You see, most people don't realize how often they narrate themselves. They explain their intentions. They soften their boundaries. They justify reactions that didn't need defending, not because they're weak, but because they were trained to stay accessible, available, readable, safe. And when you were that way, people felt comfortable around you. They could reach into you emotionally, without asking, without resistance. But something changed, not loudly, not dramatically. You simply stopped offering access, and people felt it before they understood it. You didn't stop caring. You stopped translating yourself for people who never tried to understand you in the first place. And that shift, that quiet withdrawal of explanation, did something unsettling. It removed their sense of control. Because when you explain yourself, you're giving people a map. And when that map disappears, they don't know where they stand with you anymore. That's when behavior changes. Not because you became intimidating, but because you became unreadable. And unreadable people make others uncomfortable. You probably noticed it in small moments. Someone paused before speaking to you. Someone checked your face for confirmation and didn't find it. Someone hesitated, then changed their tone. You didn't say anything, and that silence did more than words ever did. Because silence forces people to confront their own assumptions, and most people don't like what they see there. You didn't change who you are. You just stopped filling the emotional gaps for others. You stopped rushing to make things comfortable. You stopped over-clarifying your intentions so others wouldn't misunderstand you. And without realizing it, you removed a kind of emotional permission. Permission to take, permission to lean, permission to assume. That's why things shifted. You didn't become colder. You became less available to be misread. And that's a subtle difference most people never learn to recognize. You didn't stop explaining because you healed. You stopped explaining because something inside you quietly decided it was tired. Tired of being misunderstood after over-explaining. Tired of shrinking your thoughts to make them easier to digest. Tired of doing emotional labor for people who never noticed the cost. And your body remembered that decision, even when your mind didn't. Most people would have clicked away by now. But you didn't. Because this isn't information, it's recognition. You felt the shift before, even if you never named it. Here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. When you stop explaining yourself, you force others to take responsibility for how they interpret you. And many people aren't ready for that. They were comfortable when you did the work for them. When you explained your tone, your intentions, your boundaries. When you stopped doing that, they felt exposed. Not because you changed, but because the dynamic did. You weren't weak. You were available. And availability taught people how to reach you. But once that access closed, even slightly, they didn't know how to approach you anymore, so they adjusted. Some with distance, some with curiosity, some with quiet respect they never showed before, and some disappeared. That's the part no one warns you about. When you stop explaining yourself, you don't just lose misunderstandings, you lose certain connections, not because you push them away, but because they were built on access you no longer offer. And that realization can feel like loss, even when it's actually alignment. You might have noticed something else too. You speak less now, but when you do, people listen differently. Your words land heavier, not because you're louder, but because you're no longer leaking meaning everywhere. You let silence hold weight, and silence makes people confront their own noise. You can go back to being available if you want. You can explain yourself again. You can soften the edges. You can make things easy. But something in you will remember this moment. The moment you realized how much power lived in what you didn't say. If something shifted while you were listening, don't label it yet. Just stay close to that feeling, because once you start noticing it, you'll see it everywhere, in conversations, in glances, in the way people recalibrate around you. And when that happens, you'll know where to return once you feel the difference. Between being needed and being chosen, you can't unfeel it.